everybody, and welcome back to the Cinefile, the podcast celebrating cinema one film at a time. Each week, my co-host Jake Biller and I break down a film, discussing anything from mise en scène to scenes you missed. Today, we talk about how foxes can rob taxes in 1973's Robin Hood. Jake, this was your pick this week, and why don't you tell the folks at home, one, why you picked it, and what are your opening thoughts?
So I picked this because this is a childhood favorite of mine. This was a staple of young Jake's life. I was a huge Disney kid. I remember we had Disney Trivia Pursuit. I may have told this story before. We had Disney Trivia Pursuit, and we played it as a family. And we eventually stopped playing it because I won every time. Because I knew everything.
That's why you play it. You continue to play it all the time to reassure yourself that you're a genius. Yes.
I mean, everyone, I guess, just stopped having fun when I won all the time. I had a great time.
But it was great. It was real fun.
When I started correcting other people, maybe it may have gone too far. But no, I was a huge Disney kid. I loved this movie. And today marks the 50th anniversary of its wide release in the United States. So I thought, what better time to talk about this movie? I'm interested to see what your thoughts are, because I know you said you hadn't seen it, but I love this so much. It's fun. It's nostalgic. It's funny. I mean, it's still funny today. I don't know if it's just the nostalgia for me. But I really enjoy it. I hope I hope there are others out there like me that have childhood memories of watching a movie from the 70s. Maybe this just explains why I am the way I am. The fact that a childhood staple came out in 1973.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it does say something about who you are, because I'm glad you enjoyed this. I did not. I cannot say that I liked this. Yeah, I know. And every time you pick a movie and I don't like it, I'm like, crap. And for the next hour, I'm about to just deconstruct and destroy this thing.
See, that's the difference between you and me, because when I watch a movie that you love and I don't like, I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be fun. Also,
so basically,
getting over a cold.
Basically, the whole premise of this is this film kind of comes on the heels of Walt Disney's passing. This is the first film after his death in whatever year. You see the year
I wrote it down. I don't know if this is his first. It's one of the first.
I thought you said, I don't know if it's his first. I was like, how many times did he die? What do you mean?
No, Walt dies in 1966, so this is 7 years after that. It's one of the first that comes out.
I think this might be the one where he had no development.
Yeah, it's one of the first he didn't have any kind of creative input. Obviously, movies are in development long before their actual release date, and so even the movies that came out in the years after Walt died, he still had he still played a part in that development. So no, you're right. This is kind of it's in the period of Disney. There's like 7 eras people talk about in Disney, the history of Disney, especially Disney Animation. I know we talked about it in the Little Mermaid episode, because that was the beginning of the Disney Renaissance. Well, this is the period directly prior to that. They call it the Bronze Age, the Dark Age. Dark Age being the first, after Walt's passing. So
yes,
yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, what I was going to say is, so it takes these ideas and they kind of want to be anthropomorphize
animals being as people.
Yes, anthropomorphize. I might still be saying that wrong, but that's close as I'm gonna get, folks. And it kind of, the best way I can explain this is like a 2D Zootopia in kind of its look and idea and approach to the world. but and it covers Robin Hood. I think the biggest problem for me with this film is I don't really know the story of Robin Hood.
Really?
I know the very broad strokes, but medieval times, ironically enough, I'm in a madrigal, but
Yeah.
the medieval period is not something that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I quite literally, from like the fall of Rome up until like the start of like the 19th century, I just don't find interesting. um so this medieval period, and obviously it plays on the tropes of, you know, you got the friar, you've got the sheriff of Nottingham, you've got, and it talks about the crusades with King Richard leaving for the crusades, and then his brother PJ. That was funny.
Yeah.
That was
PJ,
funny.
aha.
That was he said, listen here, PJ, and I thought that was hilarious. Prince John kind of takes over, and he's trying to take over the throne. Now, in real life, doesn't Richard the Lionheart not come back?
Yeah, Richard dies in I believe it's, I'll put my history knowledge to the test. I'm vaguely
Like I said,
familiar.
I don't know anything about this period.
I believe it's the Third Crusade.
Is that the last crusade?
It's the third. No, it's there were seven. I think there were seven. I want to say it was the third or the fifth. They didn't even go to they didn't even make it all the way to the Holy Land. They ended up fighting, I think, France or whatever.
Aren't the Crusades basically England going and trying to retake the Holy Land?
It's Christian Europe. It's not just England.
Okay.
It's called for by the Pope in Rome that Christianity needs to go take the Holy Land. So it's kind of like all these hodgepodge armies just piled together. And I think in the first and second one, I know the first one they actually retake Jerusalem.
Yep.
But really, the Crusades are just not successful at all.
And also, I mean, obviously the Pope was literal, but like today, you know, like a preacher could stand up there and say, you know, we need to take back ownership of Jerusalem. And what he could mean by that is like some sort of a highbrow, like I don't know what he could mean by that, but he's probably not being literal.
Right.
But the good old boys back in the day were like, he said to take over Jerusalem again. Let's, you know, saddle up.
Let's get on our horses.
Let's ride.
Yeah. But yes,
so,
Richard the Third. Like I said, I think it's the third. I'm not positive. But he dies on the crusade.
It's Richard the Third.
Yeah,
because Richard the Third is Richard the Lionheart.
Yes, and that's why he's a lion. How witty.
Yeah, and yeah, dude's jacked too. That's like the most jacked lion I've ever seen.
I know. That lion's swole.
Yeah, he's swole. Yeah, he's a swine. A swole lion. A swine. So the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about, this obviously came out in 1973. 4 years later, there's a movie called The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Mm-hmm.
And as nostalgic as this is for you, that movie is for me. That movie is chef's kiss.
Yeah.
It is absolute elite, top tier, S tier animation. But the animation style is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Even the way in which they open the films are very similar. And the animation style itself, there is some controversy I think we probably will talk about with them reusing footage or reusing animation. Mainly because if I read up on this correctly, because I knew I wasn't gonna like this, so I was like, I need to like learn more about it so that I don't just seem like I'm just hating on this thing. Is that this kind of went through some production issues, and so they had a timetable that was a lot smaller than normal, and so they had to reuse some animation sequences. But the animation overall, I mean, it's just classic 2D.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's the 70s, but it's classic 2D animation, and there's some fun to be had there.
Yeah. You bring up the animation style, and one of the hallmarks of the dark age of Disney is this kind of scratchy 2D style with heavy black lines, because it was the introduction of xerography. So like
Yeah.
Xerox, which is like the precursor to photocopies, if I understand that correctly.
Yes.
So it's the first introduction of that technology, and the whole idea was it was supposed to make the animation process faster, because you can take movements and stuff, basic movements. There are times even just within the film that certain sequences seem to be repeated, or if you're a big Disney nerd, or a big fan of this Disney movies of this period, like the Rescuers, the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, the
Yes,
Aristocats,
sir.
movies like that, you'll notice some like familiar looking moves or familiar looking characters, because the whole point here was was Walt Disney Animation's thought, well, if we can start copying stuff, since these is just kids movies, we can do it for cheaper and make more money.
Stonks.
Which is an odd time to be talking about this at the intersection we are with the writer's strike, and
Yeah.
AI. It's kind of eerie parallels in how it's like, oh, we can just artificially do this and make it faster for cheaper. Um,
That's been part of the issue with Hollywood, is that Hollywood is both a business, but it's also artists. And
mhm,
a lot of times that doesn't mix well. And so then you can have different artists like a Chloe Zhao, who
mhm,
directed, and she won for Nomadland, and then she went into the MCU, which is more of a studio machine, and flopped because her style was more awards caliber, is more niche.
mhm.
It was I dare say maybe a little bit more sophisticated, and not advantageous for a big blockbuster, and so it
Yeah.
didn't work well. And that's like a great example. And so yeah, when they talk about kind of this Xerox, man, I'm struggling with the big words. Xerograph, that
Xerography.
word, yeah, that one. Because I even noticed, because I'm a big fan of the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I even noticed when some of the people were kind of on the sidelines cheering on Robin Hood, and there's a fence, and they're like
Mhm.
cheering on the fence. There is a sequence in Winnie the Pooh where something very similar happens, and it was just like, it was like kind of uh yeah, it like felt like I'd seen it before, but I hadn't.
Yeah.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah. There's in the big dance they have in the woods. There's a scene where I'm a big fan of the Aristocats, and there's also like a scene where all the cats get up and start dancing, and noticing some of the movements seem very, very like oddly specifically similar to that movie. So I mean, that's what it was at the time. That was how Disney, you know, went about making movies. That was the business choice, and that's kind of a reason a lot of the films in this period weren't well received at the time. It's kind of called the Dark Ages in another way, because it wasn't really a financial boom for Walt Disney
No,
Animation like they
studio
had
almost
seen.
went under.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so, it kind of creates the financial situation leading into the Disney Renaissance, when kind of uh they kind of go back to their roots, and see some more financial success. But in a way, like the style, like the scratchiness to the image, like it feels, I don't, maybe it's just because I grew up watching so many movies of this period, but like it just feels like nostalgically homey to me. Like it feels like there's like uh, I think it's also because you can tell this is hand drawn. You know what I mean? Like, yes, the images
Yes.
are copied, but like it's still someone on these like animation panels, like drawing the image by hand. And I think there's just something uh very, very homey about that and very nostalgic for me, that I really enjoy about the style.
I and it's interesting you mentioned that because I think nostalgia is a big piece here for why you like this movie and I don't.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they reuse these sequences. And my question to you, and this is just kind of a thought I had, believe it or not, I have those sometimes. So, are we talking about we may have picked some of the animated sequences before we did the story? You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah.
So,
um I genuinely don't know the answer. That's a possibility.
because it's
That's
almost some of it feels out of place. This movie, I think, struggles from a lack of vision, which is ironic because the director of the film is one of Disney's like 9 old men or 9.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wolfgang Reitherman, who did he did many adventures of Winnie the Pooh. He did his filmography is
yeah.
like
That's his
extensive.
freaking master pet. Like that's
Yeah,
that
like
that's his
basically,
magnum opus. Is many adventures.
but like basically from like the the 50s through, I think it's like through the 70s. Like if it was a Disney animation movie, like Wolfgang played a major part in some role, whether that's as an animator, as a director, as a writer. He was kind of the go-to guy of the time. Um, so yeah, it's interesting, huh? I guess I would have never. I guess I can see what you're saying about how it doesn't have vision.
Because and the reason I say that is I think people that know the Robin Hood story
Hmm.
are in a much better place going into this movie.
Yeah, because like I don't know if it's because of this movie, but that's a story I enjoy. I mean, I can think of four.
I mean, I enjoy the concept.
I can think of four different Robin Hood adaptations, and I like them all.
I can okay. So Kevin Costner,
Kevin Costner,
Prince of Thieves, then Robin Hood Men in Tights. There was a
yes,
Robin Hood that came out with
Russell Crowe in 2010.
is that the same one with Taron Egerton? No, that was like 2018.
Yeah, that one I haven't seen that one,
Yeah,
but
I haven't seen that one. I mean, I love the premise
yeah,
of me as a poor person getting some money. Um like
you as
that.
I like.
Yes, me, I'm
Oh
I'm
my
poor,
gosh.
so I like the idea of getting money,
Hmm.
so that I am no longer poor. However, the rest of it, I could kind of take it or leave it. Um, but so the reason, like I said, I don't think this has vision has more to do with the fact that if you don't know the Robin Hood story, what's the point? Why am I watching this? I feel like we don't get enough time with Robin Hood. This story is not the main character. Robin Hood is not in a significant amount of the movie.
Yeah.
There are whole scenes where he's not in, and you don't, as a main character, you don't need to be in every single frame of every single sequence in a
Hmm.
film. But at the same time, you need to be the focal point when it comes to the story. And right here, it's almost like this is, and we've said this in the last couple of weeks, a couple of times, like a companion piece
Hmm.
to the Robin Hood story. Like the Robin Hood story, and so you watch it, and you can kind of put on those blinders of understanding what's actually happening because of your previous knowledge, and so it is not as jarring when you're watching it. But for me, somebody that doesn't know the particulars, like okay, Maid Marian,
Hmm.
right? Heard of her, and I've heard of her sibling, Mary Maids, and that's so
What?
dumb. That's like a cleaning company. It's like Mary Maids.
Uh,
Um, but she's living with, I almost want to say Little John all the time. Uh, but Prince John.
yeah.
In the Robin Hood story, are they like a thing?
So It differs. Because see, here's the thing. I've never gone to like the source material of Robin Hood. Like all I've seen is like movie adaptations of it, you know?
Right.
So I don't, and like they all kind of differ in a way. I believe so. Marion, I believe it's true to the source material, like in this one, that uh she's cousins with the king. So King Richard. So then also she would be cousins with Prince
John.
John. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, that seems to carry through most adaptations. So
But and then you add Robin Hood into this,
mhm.
and bro has not talked to her apparently in years, and then essentially wins one archery contest and they're married. Like, I mean, look, I know I've been called the Rizzler on this program, but
You
I
called
can't hold a
yourself
candle.
the Rizzler.
I didn't say who called me that. I just said I've been called that. But I don't hold a candle to that fox. I mean, bro rizzed up. Like he literally he just said, "All right, I'm just gonna win this tournament as a stork, and then finesse my way into her heart." And she's like, "I love him." Like the last time you saw him, he was like a freaking small fox. I don't know, a fox cub. I don't know. I also don't really care. But look, if I wanted to be David Attenborough, I'd be David Attenborough. I'm not David Attenborough. This is a movie podcast. This isn't a Animal Planet podcast. I know he's also not on Animal Planet necessarily, but you understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to. I don't know. I'm spiraling. It's like I just didn't like this movie or something.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying about if you're not familiar with the story, that this would be looking at this movie on its own. You can have some issues with the story. I can understand that. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just really, I keep going back to this. A large part of this is nostalgia. And what do you think of some of the voice performances? I wanted to talk about that because
Yes,
there's this is a time when voice acting really wasn't how do I want to say that? I guess you could say it was kind of lower brow. Like you get into the Disney Renaissance and you start getting big names that start coming to, like Robin Williams in
well,
Aladdin.
he was the first.
Yeah, that kind of marks the first foray into that, which is, I mean,
And then we
was
have a whole era of Chris Pratt movies.
Yes,
where Chris Pratt is the voice. He's the voice of Garfield. They're doing a new Garfield. Chris Pratt's the voice of Garfield. Also, he's the voice of Mario and that dude from the Lego movie. And like just keep going and going and going.
But this is not a time. This is pre that. So
right.
I recognize a couple of the names, but they're not big stars.
It's interesting you mentioned that it's kind of more lowbrow. Or I guess maybe voice animation at this point was just not considered as significant as it is today. There are a couple performances that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple performances that I liked. I liked the bear.
Little John.
Okay, so we got Prince John and Little John.
Yes.
That's not confusing at all.
And Little John is not the little one.
Yeah, and Little John is big.
Yeah. He's voiced by Phil Harris, who you might recognize voicing another bear from The Jungle Book. He plays the voice of Baloo.
He played Baloo, and they reused some of that animation.
I mean, they look very much the same. You basically just gave him a shirt and a hat. If
he would have voiced Winnie the Pooh, it would have been the trifecta.
The bear
of
trilogy.
Animated bears.
Phil Harris's Disney Bear trilogy.
And then he reprised his role in Brother Bear, and then I had a dream like 2 weeks ago about Brother Bear, and that Justin Long was like in Brother Bear, and it like inspired his whole career.
Okay.
Don't sleep, kids. His dreams are wild. Yeah, this is prompted by absolutely nothing. Like, I went to in the dream, I went to AMC Castleton, and the only poster was for Brother Bear. And I
A
was like,
movie
well,
that's like from like 2000, what, 3, 5?
And so I was like, oh, well, gotta kill some time, so might as well go and see Brother Bear. So even in my dreams, I go and see movies. Yes. But yeah, I liked Little John. I liked the idea of Robin Hood. I can see where the performer was going with it, but it fell a little flat for me. I kind of liked Prince John. He was okay. Hiss, I liked Hiss. I thought the voice actor for Hiss did a good job, and Friar Tuck was pretty good too.
Friar Tuck is good. Oh shoot, was that? Yeah, Andy Devine. Played voice Friar Tuck, which he plays the drunk in a few John Ford movies. So I always enjoy seeing him surface as
as a friar,
as a friar. And Friar Tuck is sobriety is questioned in some other Robin Hood adaptations. So
I don't doubt it.
It makes
I don't doubt it.
sense.
Friar Tuck, I could see. I could see my guy falling off a wagon.
Yeah.
I the other thing, this movie was clearly made in 1973 because some of the jokes are very 1973. But I will say, they say multiple times in this movie the phrase "crime in Italy." I never knew where that came from. I don't know if it came from this. It probably didn't, but it's probably of that time period.
Yeah.
And like, my grandparents would say it, and so sometimes I say it, and I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a
old-timey phrase.
Okay, well, yeah, because the sheriff of Nottingham kept saying "crime in Italy" all the
Crime
time.
in Italy, nutsy.
And I also thought "crime in Italy" was 2 words, but like crime minutely or something. I don't know.
Crime minutely.
And when Little John and Robin Hood pretend to be fortune tellers, that whole scene was out of pocket. That
is funny.
Yeah, I was like, that when he stole the hubcaps.
Solid gold hubcaps.
Yeah, and then he just rubbed up on it a little bit, and don't mind if I do, and then one of the, was it a rhino or an elephant that,
the
like,
rhino?
Yeah, a rhino was like, hello there, like, oh, yeah, and then he was able to catch all of the gold in his bosom. Bosom bank. And then even what else was funny is when they kissed the hand of Prince John and they stole the jewels. That was hilarious. But yeah, that, I mean, I'm sure it could be made today, but it was just so overt. I was like, oh my gosh, like that. It was like a kind of a funny sequence, but today I don't think they would have added that.
Yeah, or it would have came off differently, or it would have been received differently, I think. There's just, there is a certain, like, kind of naivety or innocence, if you will, about this movie that's very much, it seems like, of the time and of the, oh, this is a kid's movie, you know what I mean? Like, this is, they very much were like, this movie is made for kids, and they got some laughs in there that I think carry through. I enjoy them still, but that, again, maybe purely from the nostalgia.
That may be the case. And the other thing I take issue with is the idea of it's just a kids movie, and so many people, and I'm not saying this is about you, but like, especially in Hollywood, still to this day, think that they could just make stuff for kids.
Mm.
And animated movies don't have to be for kids.
Oh, I 100%
And
agree.
especially if you look at Pixar,
Mm-hmm.
Toy Story, right? That came out in 1995. That movie is not for kids. That movie is for anyone. Now, we have funny looking toys? Yeah. But at the same time, they didn't sacrifice story. They didn't sacrifice character moments because, oh, it's just a kid's movie. But in this case, it kind of feels like they phoned it in a bit with Robin Hood, because it's like, oh, this is only a kid's movie. Like, just the fact that they would reuse animation. But I'm not talking about the dancing sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are a couple times where it quite literally seems like they reused the same footage.
Oh,
or
yeah.
altered it very slightly and then threw it back in there. And that to me shows a level of care that is not high enough in my eyes for a feature film. Like why are you reusing, like that's like if you and I were to make a movie and we realized we didn't have enough B-roll, so we had to like reuse B-roll. But even then, I would try and be as creative as possible about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That just kind of bothers me.
Yeah. And I definitely, it was something I never really noticed until for this rewatch. I noticed some of the reuse shots and it did bug me. But
The blinders of nostalgia.
Yeah. You notice it most. I think they use it most in like some of the like marching sequences, which also like was some of my favorite parts. Like little 3-4-year-old me would get up and march around my living room, mainly because the elephants were the ones marching usually. So I was like, of course, let's go.
And if folks at home don't know, Jake's favorite animal is the elephant.
Yes, and the elephants are the bad guys. What sense does that make? Explain that to me. How is an elephant a bad guy? How? It makes zero sense.
I mean, Dumbo's the bad guy, right?
No!
He made his mom run away. No, I'm just kidding. One, I know that's not what happens. And two, I just said something stupid. Yeah.
Dumbo.
Yeah.
No.
He decided to grow his ears so big that nobody would love him. That's wow. Dumbo, you're the bad guy. Jake's pissed.
Don't insult elephants while I'm on the podcast.
Anyway, so the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about, I don't know if you have anything else you really wanted to talk about, but
kind of
you've talked a lot so far about nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly, why do you think that nostalgia alters your perception of this movie?
Well, I think, like we talk about on this podcast a lot, the movie watching experience is not just, or let me say this, movie watching experience is not the same every time, right? You're influenced by the environment in which you watch it, when you watch it, the headspace you kind of come in with. And for me, when this is like one of the first movies, like I remember watching, like at all, especially besides John Wayne movies. Like this is like, it was John Wayne movies and old Disney movies. That was my childhood growing up. And so being that I love movies so much, I think that's kind of what those early movies and that kind of awe and fascination of little, 3, 4, 5-year-old Jake watching that and being entertained. And, I'd been, playing with my animals, and the elephants didn't even look anything like the elephants in this movie, but I'm marching around and I got my little toy elephants with me and whatnot. I've got my bear and I'm pretending it's Little John. And it's just, I think it kind of fosters that creativity, especially for, I think, when you connect with a movie so young, because we don't know at a young age what cinematography is, what a good story is, what good acting is. We just know what entertains us, and on some level, this connected with me, and I think forever that I will have that connection. And I think that's the way with a lot of movies. I mean, I'm sure there's movies from your childhood that you are very core memories, that will always kind of have it. You'll always have a connection with, whether that be the movie itself, or who introduced you to that movie, or the situation in which you watched it first. But there's something that sticks in your brain with a story, a memory, a movie, anything, an object, and that nostalgia then it's a very primal emotion, very primal reaction. I think nostalgia is something that's very hard to overcome and overlook, I think. So I think, this is just an example for me, something that I latched onto very early on, and it's something that I'll always, my heart will always be attached to.
Now is the time we're going to be doing our Rosebud and Thorn. Jake, I know this is a favorite of yours. I'm going to pass it off to you. What are your Rosebud and Thorn for Robin Hood?
So, no surprise, I have a number of roses. I really like the score in this. I feel like it really kind of understands the assignment well. And some of the songs in this, I really enjoy it. There's not a lot of songs. This is not like a Disney musical, which, is kind of counter to the Disney brand when you think of, but the songs are good. I think they serve their purpose. And I'm sorry, the Phony King of England, like that song, lyrical genius. Like, go back and rewatch that sequence. Lyrical genius.
That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. Oh my god. This is my turn, okay? Enough. More roses. I'm gonna go Phil Harris, who voices Little John, Peter Ustinov, who voices Prince John, Andy Devine voices Friar Tuck, and Pat Buttram.
Summerall.
No, Pat.
That's a different kind of movie.
Welcome back to The Replacements. No, Pat Buttram. Anyways, unfortunate name. He voices the sheriff of Nottingham. When I think of this movie, I think of like those four characters. Like you pointed out, I would agree, like Robin Hood is kind of forgettable in this movie, but I really enjoy those four characters, and they're kind of the standout performances, at least in my eyes, in this movie. So I'm going to give roses to all of them. I think those voice actors, they do a good job in their roles. A bud. Okay, I don't have a bud, but I do have two thorns. One, the reuse shots. I had listed it as bud, but really it's a thorn, because if it was any other movie, it'd be a thorn. I would be up in arms about it. So I'm gonna be honest here and be fair and say that is a thorn. Can't excuse lazy filmmaking. So I'm gonna give that a thorn. And then the other thorn is, why are the elephants the bad guys? Elephants are not bad guys.
Elephants are absolute units.
They are.
They must be treated as such.
Yes. I mean, I can understand, though, why Prince John wants his security detail to be rhinos and elephants. Yeah. Because if I was walking around the forest and I was a puny little lion, I would want to be guarded by rhinos and elephants.
Yeah. I mean, that's the squad right there.
It is the squad.
The squad. So roses. I have to have a rose.
Asshole.
No, I have two roses. Some of the vocal performances, like I said, I think Little John, Sheriff of Nottingham, did well. I thought I actually really liked his kind of Southern charm, even though he kept asking for money. I was like, man, taxes. Also, like the fact that Prince John, he's such a monumental asshole. And the reason why is not because he wants to take over the throne. It's because bro was just like, give me all of your money.
Yeah.
And you know, and the sheriff of Nottingham isn't necessarily a bad guy. He just is doing his job. But as I always say, I always like following the rules, unless the rules are stupid, in which I don't follow them because they are stupid rules. And in this case, I'd be like, all right, this is kind of abhorrent. You know, this is kind of ridiculous. So we're not doing that.
When you're shaking down a cripple for his last coin, that's messed up.
That is messed up. So I enjoyed the vocal performances. I also enjoyed the animation style, the 2D kind of almost exaggerated movements. And nowadays, especially with 3D animation and CGI, we go for realism.
Mhm.
And there is a charm to the fantasy of 2D animation where things happen if physics isn't applicable all the time. So I really do appreciate that. For a Bud, I would say the story itself. I think there are pieces there. There's obviously a story that is happening, but kind of a lack of directorial vision makes this a bunch of scenes put together. And while beautifully animated, I wanted to see something tighter. As for Thorns, I would say the reused animation. I wasn't a huge fan of the score.
Really?
I appreciated the kind of the southern, not Roger Moore.
Roger Miller.
Yeah, Roger Miller. I appreciated that, but at the same time, kind of go all in or don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like they kind of teased it, but they didn't really dedicate themselves to it. So that would be those would be a couple of thorns. Now we are going to talk about who we think we are. And Jake, I'm passing it off to you. You better make the right decision here. I am clearly Richard the Lionheart, the absolute unit that he is.
That has 10 seconds of screen time.
Hey, a unit's a unit, no matter how small.
No, you are not. I'm not going to say you're Richard the Lionheart. I kind of wanted to say you were Robin Hood.
Hell yeah.
For a while, but
let's go. W.
But I think there is someone that's a little more accurate.
Friar Tuck.
No. Our narrator. His name is Alan Adale. Stupid name. But
that
the
rooster.
So
stupid. That's so rooster. Stupid.
That's our narrator. He introduces himself as a minstrel, and honestly, if we went back to this period, you would be a minstrel, I think.
Like you're not the only person in the last month that has told me that.
You just love telling stories. You're musically inclined. You like to entertain. And I will say, I think really our narrator is sometimes the only thing that kind of gets us from scene to scene in this movie. And knowing how much you love story.
I do.
And are a good storyteller. I saw that and I was like, yeah, this is Ben.
I am going to say you are the Cluck Master herself.
Really?
Yeah, is it Lady Cluck?
Lady Cluck.
That's such a dumb name.
The lady in waiting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. You're the
I'm not good at badminton, Lord in waiting, by the way.
Yeah, well, neither was she. So the thing that really took it over the edge for me was the sass.
Mm-hmm.
She had some sass, but also the football scene. I don't know why I watched it, and I was like, "This is so Jake." Like, this is literally so Jake. Yeah. So I mean, she's got the sass and kind of the wit. But the football scene really took it over the edge. I was like, this is so Jake Biller right here.
Okay, you want to add an extra layer to that? In the football scene, they play, I think, a couple, or maybe it's just one fight song, marching band
Yes.
fight song.
Is it the
And
Notre Dame fight song?
No, it is
Okay.
On Wisconsin, which was my high school fight song.
Well, collect me. Wow. So yeah. So I was right. So don't give me that lady in waiting crap. Yeah.
Oh.
Sometimes a W's a W. You just got to call it. And that was a W. Absolute W. No L's taken. No L's taken.
0.
Now we're kind of moving into some final thoughts. Jake, we've had a nostalgic trip down memory lane.
Yes.
What are your final thoughts on Robin Hood?
So on this rewatch, I was able to look at this a little more critically. I saw some of the errors, the flaws. I understand where you're coming from, Ben, but at the end of the day, this will always be a movie I love. It is like I talked about. It is so tied to so young core memories to me, and really kind of my early love of film and filmmaking. So this will always have a special place in my heart. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's kind of a slept on Disney movie. It comes from kind of a kind of glossed over period in Disney animation history. So I think it's a neat find. It kind of goes off the beaten path, and not necessarily in the best ways possible. It kind of strays away from some core Disney ideals, and that's probably rather the reason it wasn't commercially successful. Or that commercially successful.
It was. I mean, it made money.
It made money. Okay.
It made money.
It was kind of a trip down a path that led Disney to some financial hardship. But that being said, it's entertaining. I love it, and I hope there are those out there that love it. You love it as well.
Yeah, for me, this was an enlightening first watch. Not every movie is for everybody, and that doesn't mean that it's better or worse just because you don't like it. I think there are some redeeming qualities here. The biggest thing is, if this had a different director, I think this would have done better, or at least it would have been better in my eyes. There's some fun animation and some memorable voice performances, but overall, it in my opinion is not one that I'm going to rewatch. And sometimes that's the beauty of film. It is subjective. So sometimes Jake's going to like a movie that I don't like, and sometimes I'm going to like a movie that Jake doesn't like, mainly the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's totally fine, but the real question is for you folks. Had you seen Robin Hood from 1973? Do you like it? Did you notice those kind of animated sequences that maybe were in other films before it? Let us know your thoughts, your review down in the comments down below. If you like this video, hit that like button and ring that bell with the subscribe button to get all notifications on upcoming content. Next week, we are talking Spartacus with Kirk Douglas, and look at that dimple. That's yeah, that's actually, no, the movie's not Spartacus. It's called Follow the Dimple. Because bro has the biggest.
It is deep.
It's deep and wide. Deep and wide. Kirk Douglas's chin dimple is deep and wide. Yeah, there's your minstrel magic for you. Make sure to follow us on social media. Follow Jake, myself, and the Cinefile. You see all the links right there. For Jake Biller, I'm Ben Sparrow. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. And cut.